Greetings and welcome to episode 20 of Got a Story for You. I'm Phil Giunta, back after another brief hiatus while I was off writing some new short stories for contests and anthologies, and I'm pleased to report that two of my short stories have been accepted into two different anthologies that will be published in the first quarter of 2021. And I'll have more information about those books, including some beautiful cover art, in a future episode. But for now, I'd like to read for you my last and longest story in this anthology, Elsewhere in the Middle of Eternity, published by Firebringer Press in 2016. It's the second volume in the Middle of Eternity speculative fiction series. And in past episodes, I've read for you my other two stories from this book, My New Shiny and Life and Limb. This will be a three-part science fiction noir tale called Working the System, dedicated to one of my favorite science fiction writers of all time, Philip K. Dick, hence the Blade Runner t-shirt. Just to give you a quick synopsis of the story, 2 years after leaving the interstellar Navy, Lieutenant Cameron Glazier finds himself embroiled in a police investigation following the murder of his former captain. The man's death is soon connected to one of Glazier's final missions in the Navy, and also makes Glazier the target of a vindictive scientist. I hope you enjoy Working the System. The deck was littered with bodies. At the captain's orders, they'd been callously dumped in the cargo hold. Practically all were riddled with blaster burns. A few had been dismembered to varying degrees. The last one had lost a chunk of his head during the morning's violent incursion in the Ganzing Belt. Drug lords are afforded the dignity of body bags, while our own casualties are tossed in here like garbage. As he weaved his way through the dead, Lieutenant Cameron Glazier clenched his jaw against the bile rising in his throat. He knew how the captain felt about them, but that didn't justify this. Wait until Michaud sees this. Glazier considered ordering body bags before... What the hell is this? Too late. Oliver Michaud stood in the doorway, staring at the congeries of corpses. A biomechanical engineer for the Geary Corporation, Michaud had been assigned to the Kindred as a civilian contractor. Wasn't my idea, Ollie. Captain's orders. This is not happening. Michaud stormed into the hold, gaping at the scene. After brushing past Glazier, he crouched beside the last body. Delicately, he turned the man's head to conceal the gaping wound that had been the right side of his face. His name was Vance. We used to play chess. Some of our games went on for weeks. He was fascinated by stories about even the most mundane things we take for granted. Michaud looked across the hold at the others. They're programmed to appreciate kindness and friendship. Did you know that, Cam? In many ways, I'm more comfortable around androids than my own kind. I know. They were good people. They fought well. Sorry you had to see this, Ollie. How are the survivors? Once the nanites finish repairing their injuries, they'll be fine. Microscopic robots administered through injection, nanites were capable of healing non-fatal wounds, both internal and external, and curing certain common diseases. Each of Michaud's androids had been manufactured with nanites in its synthetic bloodstream. However, those that lay strewn across the deck had been damaged beyond even the nanites' capability to restore. Michaud sighed and shook his head. Such a goddamn waste. Better them than us, a new voice chimed in. Both men turned as Sergeant Amira Eklund approached, rounding the pile of bodies without so much as a glance. Isn't that the whole point of your androids, to spare human lives? Michaud pointed toward the bodies. And this is how you express your gratitude? They're machines, Ollie. They're biomechanical, with emphasis on bio. Don't forget, they're also property of the system, Eklund said. Michaud let his arm drop to his side. Look who's talking. Eklund opened her mouth to respond when Glazier's comm phone buzzed. Hoping to escape yet another debate between these two, he pulled it from his belt and peered at the screen. It's Commander Zamora. Glazier pressed a button. Glazier here. Lieutenant, I need you and Eklund in the main conference room immediately, and bring Dr. Michaud. This concerns him, too. In the conference room minutes later, Glazier, Eklund, and Michaud took seats opposite Commander Elian Zamora. As with most people indigenous to the continent of Laneshka, Zamora's orange eyes were in striking contrast to his dark complexion. Even when seated, the commander cut an imposing figure in both height and physique. He greeted them with a solemn nod, thick hands folded atop the table. Lieutenant Glazier, Sergeant Eklund. Congratulations on a flawlessly executed assault today. You managed to eliminate nearly 70% of the illegal drug trade in the system, especially Yezerin. Commendations are in order for both of you. Thank you, sir, Glazier and Eklund replied in unison. Zamora shifted his gaze to Michaud. And you, Doctor. Your androids performed commendably. I think it's safe to say that today's expedition provided irrefutable proof of their value to the military. You must be proud. Michaud smiled thinly, his eyes downcast. Yeah, thanks. Commander, I get the feeling we were called here for more than a pat on the back, Glazier said. What's this about? Zamora shrugged. It's the captain's meeting. He should be along shortly. All I can say is that he did not sound pleased. Eklund frowned. With our performance? She spoke just as the conference room door slid aside. Not at all, Sergeant. Captain Vako Jorgen strode into the room and took a seat at the head of the conference table. Jorgen was a gaunt, middle-aged man with platinum hair trimmed close to his pale scalp. As he sat forward, his wide gray eyes locked onto Glazier in what had become known among the crew as the stare of steel, more like ice. If the man's eyes had ever held any compassion at all, 2 decades in the system military had robbed him of it. Glazier's shoulders tensed as the captain began. Damn fine job out there, Lieutenant. In fact, I admit to a certain degree of personal gratification in your success. It was no secret that Jorgen had lost his daughter to an overdose of Yezerin 8 months ago. When manufacture of the drug had been traced back to a laboratory in the Ganzing Belt, a ring of asteroids orbiting the 11th planet in the Noltak system, he had volunteered to lead the assault. I'll get right to the point. In the 14 months since we left port, we've all watched the political situation back home steadily deteriorate. Since the new fundamentalists attained increased representation over the past 2 elections, they've exerted more influence over policy than the progressives. Even as we decimated the Ganzing drug cartel today with the assistance of Dr. Michaud's androids, the fundamentalists finally managed to pass their law banning the development of artificial intelligence and biomechanical technologies, regardless of their purpose. That's impossible, Michaud blurted. The system can't just stifle decades of scientific progress because some politicians hold a fairy tale belief in a non-existent deity. I sympathize, Doctor. I despise the idea of our government turning into a theocracy, but right now, the religious zealots have control. What does that mean for us, Captain? Jorgen looked at Michaud. It means that Dr. Michaud is hereby ordered to deactivate his androids. The engineer stared at him for several seconds, his incredulous expression hardening to anger. Shit, Glazier tensed. Here it comes. You mean kill them? They don't have off switches, Captain. They're not automatons. I was trying to be delicate, Doctor. Michaud threw himself back in his seat and stared at the ceiling. This is not happening. The room fell silent, all eyes on Michaud. After several seconds, he held up both hands. Okay, wait. Captain, what if you let me have a shuttle? I could take the surviving androids into the empty quarter and disappear. No one would ever know. An expanse of unclaimed space stretching about 50 light years, the empty quarter separated Noltak from the next populated system controlled by the Zorine Alliance. It contained few planets, most of them uninhabitable. Zamora nodded in support of the idea. We could turn over the androids from the cargo hold as evidence of their destruction. You of all people should know the penalty for lying to the system, Commander. Jorgen turned his scowl on Michaud. Even if I could use your dead androids as a smokescreen, Explain how I'm supposed to account for a missing shuttle. Lost in battle. That would require tampering with the ship's logs. This hole you have me digging would become my grave. I'm sorry, Doctor, but the orders stand. Michaud shook his head. I don't think you're sorry at all, Captain. I think you're pleased. You never wanted my androids aboard your ship in the first place. You were probably hoping the fundies would push their law through. You're no better than they are. Glazier shot a sidelong glance at Eklund. Both knew that Jorgen would maintain his composure only for so long. Insubordination, even from a civilian, was not tolerated. I'm far from a fundamentalist, Dr. Michaud, but you're right. I don't trust androids. I don't trust artificial intelligence at all, no matter how much it resembles a human. System High Command ordered me to test your products on this mission, and now they're ordering me to destroy them. I follow my orders. It's that simple, Doctor. Like hell it is. Michaud leapt to his feet. I'm contacting my company. Oh, I'm afraid you'll find that conversation a bit one-sided. System police have already seized Geary Corporation's AI facilities. Your fearless leader, Dr. Isaac Geary, is currently missing, but a warrant has been issued for his arrest. If he refuses to cooperate, he'll be tried and probably imprisoned or exiled. I would hate to see the same thing happen to someone as young and promising as yourself, Doctor. Michaud leaned over the conference table. I realize they're mere chattel to you, Captain, but these androids have become friends to me and many of your crew. I created them. How can you expect me to murder them? I take it that means you refuse to cooperate. Michaud's smoldering gaze met Jorgen's frigid stare. There's obviously nothing I can do to stop you. Their blood is on your hands, Captain. I'll have no part of this. I see. Jorgen kept the civilian in his sights as he spoke. Sergeant Eklund, please escort Dr. Michaud to his quarters, where he is to be confined until we're planetside, at which point we'll turn him over to the military police. Let the system deal with him. Eklund rose from her seat and stood beside Michaud. She placed one hand on her firearm and the other on his shoulder. This isn't over, Captain. It is for you, Doctor. Thank you for your service aboard the Kindred. Jorgen nodded at Eklund. She turned Michaud toward the door. He shot a final threatening glance at Jorgen before departing. When they were out of earshot, Zamora looked to Glazier. How many androids survived the raid, Lieutenant? 7, sir. Jorgen smirked as he looked from Glazier to Zamora. That's all? The good doctor made it seem as if there were more. The captain and first officer rose from their seats in unison. Glazier's shoulders tensed as he did the same. Don't even say it. Jorgen smiled thinly. We'll leave the method of their disposal to your discretion, Lieutenant. Dismissed. Damn it. Glazier felt the heat drain from his face. Sir, if I may... Is there a problem, Lieutenant? You and Eklund can handle 7 androids, can't you? Glazier clenched his jaw. As I understand it, Lieutenant, your tour aboard the Kindred will end in 2 weeks. Glazier held steady against the captain's threatening scowl. That's correct, sir. I'd hate to see such a loyal officer spend the remainder of this expedition in the brig, not to mention leaving the service with a dishonorable discharge for disobeying an order from the System High Command. That would forfeit your benefits and make it difficult to find a civilian job. Now, do we understand each other, Lieutenant? Yes, sir. Bastard. The guards assigned to Michaud's quarters snapped to attention as Glazier approached. Ignoring them, he pressed a button beside the door. A few seconds passed before it slid aside. Glazier entered into complete darkness. Across the cabin, a porthole encompassed almost the entire outer bulkhead, permitting a sweeping view of the Ganzing Belt. Countless multicolored points of light studded even the smallest of the asteroids, marking various settlements and mining operations. What do you want? Michaud was somewhere to his left. I came by to apologize, Ollie. Finally, Glazier's eyes adjusted, and he found the engineer hunched forward in his chair facing the porthole. He ordered you to do it. You and Eklund. Glazier lowered his head. Yeah, I bet she enjoyed it. Well, I did not. I know. I still don't get what you see in her. But I guess any port in a storm. Glazier let the comment go. His relationship with Eklund was no secret among the lower decks. She was also part of the reason he was leaving the service, although he'd never revealed that to her. So how did you do it? How did you deactivate them? Does it matter? It was fast and painless, I promise. That's more than I can say for myself right now. Political tides change and my life ends up in the shit can. If it's any consolation, Ollie, I convinced Jorgen to dismiss what happened in the conference room. There will be no report of your refusal to cooperate, and once we're back on Noltak, you'll be free to go. Thanks, Ken. At least someone on this ship has a heart. What will you do now? Oh, I've been pondering that very question for the past few hours. I haven't entirely decided, but one thing is certain. I'll never forget what happened here today. 2 years later. After reviewing the last incident report of the day, District Manager Cameron Glazier opened the tattered blinds covering his office window at Satellite Security Systems. Outside, the smog-filtered sunset draped the city in a shroud of greenish gold. Soon, 2 of Noltak's 3 moons would become visible in the eastern sky, but not the stars. I haven't seen them since I left the service. I need to get the hell out of the city for a while. Need to look at something other than the inside of this goddamn office every night. To this day, Glazier wondered if he truly made the right decision to leave system duty. Of course, there were more than a few days when he'd wondered what the hell convinced him to stay in as long as he had, especially near the end, after Ganzing. A brusque knock on his office door jarred Glazier back to the present. He turned to find a tall, olive-skinned man in a tan leather duster standing in the open doorway. Sorry to intrude. Cameron Glazier? We're closed for the day. How did you get up here? The man produced a wallet from his coat pocket. He flipped it open and held up a familiar badge. Detective Russell Negron, System Police. Glazier glanced at his watch. I'm on my way out. This won't take long. Negron dropped into a seat in front of Glazier's desk. Just have a few questions for you. Rubbing his forehead, Glazier sighed before returning to his chair. About... Negron pulled a small white envelope from his coat pocket and tossed it onto the desk. Open it. Glazier hesitated before snatching it up. He sat back and removed the contents of the envelope, a single photograph of a bearded man dressed in civilian clothes, leaning casually against a wall in what appeared to be a living room. Glazier focused on the face until recognition finally struck. He shot forward in his chair. Negron tilted his head. Look familiar? You already know it does. Captain Vico Jorgen. The beard threw me off, but that's definitely him. Glazier looked up at Negron. I served under Jorgen on the Kindred for 2 tours. I heard he retired not long after I left the service. Is he in trouble or something? He's dead. Glazier stared at the cop for a moment before peering down at the photo once more. What happened? Found him in his home 2 days ago. His throat was slit ear to ear. Robbery? No sign of a struggle or forced entry. We think Jorgen knew his killer. Glazier slid the photo across the scratched, worn surface of his desk and held up his hands. Afraid I can't help you. I never kept in touch with anyone I served with. Well, that's not why I'm here. We searched Jorgen's house. Every room was intact except his office. It was ransacked. Materials related to the Kindred, mostly files and photographs, were scattered everywhere. We have no way to tell what's missing. Jorgen lived alone, so there's no one to ask, but it made me wonder whether someone from the crew might have held a grudge against him. Well, if I'm on your suspect list, I can tell you I had no quarrel with Jorgen. I didn't even know he was living in the city. Seabourn, actually, about 20 minutes north of here. Care to tell me where you were at approximately 2:30 a.m. 2 days ago? In bed. Anyone with you? That's none of your damn business. Routine question, Mr. Glazier. Bullshit. If you weren't a cop, I'd knock that goddamn smirk off your face. We've done background checks on everyone who served with Jorgen. Your former captain seems to have made his share of enemies here and there. A few other crew members from the Kindred and one or two captains from other system ships. Most of them are still in the service and were off-world at the time of the murder. Your service record is squeaky clean, Glazier. I've also questioned your boss here, and she had nothing but rave reviews about you. The only blank I'm coming across is this Elian Zamora. Name ring a bell? Cat and mouse game. Jorgen's first officer. I didn't know him very well. He came aboard only a few weeks before my last tour was over. What's the matter? Can't find him? We have no record of his existence prior to his military career. It's as if he just magically appeared one day. I understand he was a replacement for Jorgen's original first officer. Right, Keelan was her name. She was a by-the-book hard-ass. I understand she's a police captain now. Yeah, she runs a station near the edge of the empty quarter. Trust me, she hasn't changed at all. But I digress. We have info that marked Zamora living in a secluded house up north in Lost Hills. I'd like to make a visit out there. Why tell me? Glazier, my captain sent me out here to see if you'd be interested in helping us, and helping me make contact with some of the crew from the Kindred. You'd be a liaison between us and them. Frankly, I didn't think it was necessary, but I'm willing to try it. But what if I don't want to be involved in this? I put in my time with the system and I've moved on. It's voluntary, no obligation. But be aware that working with us will go a long way towards staying off our suspect list. So either I help you or I get some cop hounding every move I make until you find your killer. Don't have much of a choice, do I? Negron merely stared, smirk and all, awaiting Glazier's reply. Bastard. In God's country, the sky was naked, as it should be. Glazier stared through the windshield at an eternal starscape, uninhibited by the light pollution and smog of the city. If he focused on the speckled sky, even at this low altitude, it felt like home. Been too long. I've missed every one of you. Yeah, I think this is the place. Behind the controls of the police skiff, Negron flipped a series of switches on the overhead console. The craft slowly descended, its running lights illuminating the unkempt lawn below. Pressure from the thrusters sent tall grass and weeds undulating like ripples across a lake surface. Going down, first floor lingerie, edible undies, jewelry, and toys you don't give your kids. Live fashion show every Tuesday night. You always like this? What's wrong? No sense of whimsy? I'm here against my will, remember? A mere triviality, my brother. Why not make the best of it? You're a soldier, a man of action. You can't honestly tell me you'd rather be sitting behind some desk running a rent-a-cop company. Actually, at this hour, I'd be at the gym or the bar or home. Negron looked at him with that damnable smirk. No girlfriend? Not at the moment. You? Yeah, I'm seeing this little blonde on and off. When I'm off with her, I sometimes hook up with a redhead I met at a party last year. Oh, so you're a player. I like to think of myself as a man of action. Ladies like men of action. Oh, it's going to be a long night. Upon landing, Glazier fixed his gaze on the two-story stone farmhouse in front of them. There was no sign of life in or around it. The skiff's headlights illuminated a rotted double-hung window set into an equally dilapidated stone wall. Glazier guessed the house to be nearly 200 years old. Judging from the general condition of the property, it appeared no one had been anywhere near this place in decades. Where did you get your information from again? Glazier and Negron stepped out of the skiff into the brisk, clean air of rural night. Negron didn't answer. He reached into the back of the vehicle and removed two flashlights. After tossing one to Glazier, he shut down the skiff, momentarily immersing the area in total darkness, save for the pale orange glow of Noltak's largest moon, just now coming into view above the trees. Switching on their flashlights, the two men began scanning the immediate area. The first thing they spotted was a large metal storage shed, about 10 meters behind them. It was surrounded on three sides by towering arbor vitae, which had obscured it from view while they were descending in the skiff. Glazier wondered if that was more than coincidence. Sweeping their lights across the grounds revealed a rusted chain link fence tilted at various angles along its span around the property's perimeter. After a few more minutes, Negron finished his cursory inspection and started toward the house. Curiosity piqued. Glazier didn't follow. Instead, he trudged through the overgrowth to the storage shed. Its dull metal walls were covered in a myriad of dents, rust spots, and dried leaves. It appeared to have been abandoned for as long as the house, except for one minor incongruity. The double doors were sealed with a digital combination lock. Glazier recognized it as one of the newer models released in the last 6 months. Several such locks were currently being installed at client sites by satellite security. This particular model was equipped with fingerprint sensors behind each of the buttons on the keypad. Not only did you need to know the correct sequence, but your fingerprints had to be pre-registered in the lock's memory. Without doing the latter, knowing the former was useless. What could possibly be in here to warrant such a high-end lock? Negron approached, his voice a strained whisper. "Hey, what do you got?" Glazier pointed to the lock. A bit out of place, wouldn't you say? The detective nodded and aimed his flashlight at the bare ground just in front of the shed. Shallow grooves in the dirt provided a telltale sign. Someone's covering their tracks. This place isn't as abandoned as we're meant to believe. Grass was cut here too, Glazier observed. A narrow strip of lawn had been recently mowed to create a path between the shed and farmhouse. Negron tilted his head toward the path. Well, let's go see if anyone's home. Seconds later, the pair stood on the crumbling concrete slab that served as the home's front stoop. Like toothpicks beneath an anvil, two wooden pillars, visibly warped, stood at the outer corners of the slab, supporting a miniature, gabled roof. Don't sneeze. Glazier stood back as Negron knocked on the steel door with the handle of his flashlight. The filth-gray door, probably white at one time, creaked open slightly. Negron drew his gun before pushing the door open. Rusted hinges, jarred from their prolonged torpor, squealed in objection as the men entered. Inside, the house was silent. A short hallway eventually opened into a sizable living room, the air dank and fetid. Negron reached the room first, shining his flashlight along stained, peeling wallpaper in search of a light switch. He found it at the end of the hallway and flipped it on. Nothing happened. Leaving the front door wide open behind him, Glazier scanned the floor ahead of him as he stepped into the living room. In the far left corner, a metal folding chair lay toppled on its side, as if its occupant had left in a hurry. Beside the chair, technical journals, notepads, and assorted paperwork lay scattered atop a table. Negron was already there, methodically rummaging through all of it. Some of this is from Geary Corp, and it looks like some could be files from Jorgen's house. Glazier made his way over to the stairs leading to the second story. As he reached the bottom step, his foot nudged something solid and flat. Shining his flashlight on the object, he picked it up. Recognition struck him instantly, just as it had a few hours before, when he gazed at the photo of his former captain. Glazier inspected the tablet computer. The familiar insignia and hull number of the Kindred were etched into its back panel. A blinding light suddenly assaulted his vision. "Get that damn thing out of my face!" Negron lowered his flashlight. "Find something?" "Obviously." Glazier said no more as he continued his examination of the device. "So what is it?" Glazier pressed several buttons on the tablet's on-screen keypad and read the data that scrolled across its screen. Finally, Glacier held up the device. I'll be damned. This belonged to Welcome, gentlemen! In unison, the men spun in the direction of the unfamiliar voice, both flashlights cutting through the darkness but finding no one. Negron raised his gun just as another flash of light shot across the living room, this one projecting the hologram of a man standing beside the overturned chair. It's a rare delight to have guests. Please make yourselves at home. I'm afraid you won't be leaving here alive. Before Glacier could get the chance to attach a name to the face, the unmistakable slam of the front door shook the walls. For a moment, the grinning image wavered from the vibration before vanishing into the darkness as abruptly as it had appeared. Damn it, Glacier cursed as realization dawned. Move! Negron started for the front door, only to be grabbed by his coat collar and jerked back toward the window behind them. What the... Negron's protest was drowned in a deafening roar as the house exploded, sending the pair crashing headfirst through the double-hung window and onto the lawn. They scrambled to their feet and ran for cover behind the skiff until the shower of debris abated, leaving only the intense heat of the blaze radiating from what remained of the old house. Once inside the skiff, Negron turned to Glacier. You all right? Ears are ringing, but otherwise I'm fine. Yeah, same here. Who the hell was that? Oliver Michaud. He was a civilian engineer aboard the Kindred. We walked into a fucking trap. Son of a bitch probably made us the moment we landed. While Negron contacted the local fire department, Glacier exhaled and closed his eyes, but not before casting one last glance at the aluminum storage shed and its open doors. Michaud weaved the ATV through the woods at top speed, leaving behind the conflagration that had once been his makeshift headquarters. It's not as if he would miss the place, merely a necessity that had outlived its usefulness. Earlier, he'd watched the police skiff touch down in the front yard. It was a possibility he'd been prepared for. The underground tunnel that led from the basement of the farmhouse to the storage shed had been created months ago for just such an occasion. Once he climbed up into the shed, Michaud used a remote control to open the exterior lock from inside, and waited long enough to be certain his preparations had paid off. Just as he had envisioned, the house erupted in a thunderous explosion. Eventually, the sissies would discover what lay beneath the farmhouse, but by then, it would be too late to stop him. Now it was time to execute the second phase of his plan. There were travel arrangements to be made.